Okay. How's it going?
Match your energy.
Man, perfect. I absolutely love it. I love it. Thank you so much, first and foremost, for taking the time today. Sounds like a busy day. Can you tell us what you're up to? Some kind of sick news.
Yeah. I just got to Chicago because they're opening up an Alamo Draft House here, and they're opening up a video store attached to the Alamo Draft House, a rental space that's within the bar. So Midnight
Whoa.
Rental is going to have a shelf of movies in that area. There's going to be a bunch of other tape people who have shelves in the video vortex. That's what it's called. So to
Whoa.
drop off my tapes and to see what it's all about. So it's really freaking cool.
That is so sick. Wow, that is, I mean, and it's so cool to be able to talk to even people outside of the country, that mentioned that still have rentals. It's like it's unfortunately now kind of like a thing that is of our past, but so sick to
Yeah.
hear that they're actually doing stuff like that. Wow.
Yeah, it warms my heart to know that they are not only still continuing it on, but they're making it accessible for people who, might step into a space like that and they will say, "Oh, I want to rent a VHS, but they don't have a VCR." So you can rent a VCR on site too. And they have DVD players for
Oh,
rent. They
really?
have, I don't know how many DVDs to rent. I think like over 10,000. So they have different little,
Whoa.
all the covers are printed out. It's really cool. It's very, very impressive. I
So
don't
sick.
know about if you, like, I worked at a video store when I was in high school and in college and then after, so it was like walking in was like, whoa.
It's awesome. Dang. It's so funny too, even mentioning that, because recently I was bringing my kids, we recently busted out our N64. And so like them, like just with it being a little bit more simple and not being Xbox or anything and still small, I'm like, hey, we should check this out. And we actually have a couple of stores local that sell, but they're like, man, can't we just like try them and not have to pay $40 for it to rent? And I'm like, there was a time, but now
Once
you have
upon
to
a
buy them.
time, yeah.
Yeah. So that's sick. I love that. It's awesome. Okay, so bringing that back, as far as earlier in your story, even before, horror, where does the interest in film come from for you, as far as if it was something parents introduced you or just something that really was something that drew your interest?
Sure. I think that movies for me have always been, like, I think with many other people, an escape. And I grew up in a very heavily Catholic-leaning household, and my mom was not, wouldn't let me watch anything. So when your parents say you can't do this or you can't look at that, that makes you want to do
Yep.
that and look at
Yeah.
whatever they're saying to not look at even more. So I grew up without cable, and my friend growing up, she had every cable channel you could think of. So I would spend every weekend at her house watching a lot of the R-rated movies that I definitely wasn't supposed to be seeing. So from that came, I just loved horror movies because I knew I wasn't supposed to be watching them. So I think that made me view them with a slightly different lens. So I was more hyper aware of, oh, I'm not supposed to be seeing that. Oh, that's why I'm not supposed to be seeing that, because it's violent. And I liked that horror movies scared me. I don't know what that is, what that psychological thing is as a kid where you like the thing that is keeping you up at night. I
Yeah.
have no idea what it is, but I was always drawn to that from the first time I saw Psycho and Cat's Eye in the same night when I was
Oh, wow.
in first
Okay.
grade. And oh my God, that scared the shit out of me.
Cat's Eye is awesome too. That's
Yeah.
like, I feel like one with anthologies that a lot of people don't bring up. And once you watch it, it feels so familiar and so comfortable. And like, why, I don't know why this isn't brought up more, along with like creep shows and but so fun. That's awesome. I love that. That's cool.
Yeah.
And in agreements too, like as far as just personally, that was always a thing where it was, with a very Christian household, and my parents, the nicest, quietest people. But as far as anything, bloody or rough, I remember them watching like Interview with the Vampire, and I would have to stand by my room door because like I couldn't be out there, but I'm listening. I'm like, oh man, that sounds terrible. I don't know what's happening, but it sounds crazy.
It's so true. I remember, because anything rated R was strictly off limits, and I remember going to the video store with my mom one night, and she let me pick out whatever I wanted. I mean, that wasn't R, and so I grabbed Revenge of the Nerds because it looked pretty and the cover was cool. And then this is like an example of what a lame, honest child I was. When we got home, I remember she got on the phone with one of her girlfriends, and I started watching the movie, and I was like, oh my God, there's like boobs everywhere. And I looked at the back, and it was R. So I went and I told them, I was like, just so you know, this is rated R. And she was on the phone, and she didn't want to be bothered. She's like, hey, I don't care. So I did get to see Revenge of the Nerds legally.
It's awesome. Oh my God. Okay, so what brings an earlier memory for you? Is it the movie theater or your video rental? Where do that special place in your heart come from?
I think one of my earliest memories is at the movie theater. It's one of my first memories, and my dad had taken me to see the Care Bears movie, and
Okay.
I started crying when it ended not because it was sad, but I was just sad that the movie was over. So there's my dad dealing with like an upset 3-year-old. But yeah, I was crying because the movie was over. I wanted more of the movie, but from that specific memory aside, the rest of the bulk of like movie memories is very much instilled in being in a video store, because the town I grew up in had a couple different like very small mom and pop video stores that we spent a lot of time at.
Okay. And so, I mean, touching on and this was not, specific or anything like that, but like Cleveland area then, or right outside?
Cleveland area, yeah. I grew up in Berea, which is maybe about like 12 to 15 minutes right outside of Cleveland. So.
Oh, okay. So as far as your local video shop, bring us back to, kind of painting a picture. Like you walk in, is it, a dark hallway with posters lined? What's that fun memory from your local video shop?
So we had a couple. We had one on Front Street. It was called Fox Video, and that was the one I remember so clearly that had all of the horror movies. Like I remember so specifically the cover for Return to Horror High. That scared
my God.
the crap out of me. That and Blood Beach. I would just look at it and just like be so curious, but like so just terrified. And Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. That cover scared me too. I just very specifically remember those three. And then we also had Movie Mart, which was a very, very small local chain. I think they had maybe like 4 stores, but that was our local, the one closest to our house. And I loved all of the movie posters that they had, and I wanted this was when Buffy the Vampire Slayer came out on video, and I wanted the Buffy the Vampire Slayer poster, and my mom was like, well, if you want something, you're going to have to ask for it. Like you can't, like you just have to talk to them. They're just pushing me to like make the first move. So I gathered up my courage and I asked the guy at the counter, what do you do with the movie posters when you're done with them? And he said, well, we just throw them away. And I said, can I have the Buffy the Vampire Slayer poster? And he said, yeah, you can come back and pick it up when in 2 weeks or whatever, when we're taking it down. So when I came back to get it, he gave me all of the rest of the posters that they were going to throw away. So I had all of these video store posters, and I started selling them at school for $2 a poster. And then when I realized how many people wanted posters, I upped it to $5 a poster. So that was like my first hustle job. And then my mom didn't know that she didn't realize that I had gotten all of these other posters, and she didn't know I was doing that. And then every week I was walking there and picking up more posters. So one day she found my money, all of my poster money. I had like rolled it up and hid it under the dresser. And she was like, where did you get this? And I was like, well, I've been selling black market video posters.
Oh my
So
God, that's
Movie
awesome.
Mart holds a very, very, very special place in my heart. That is one item I would love to find while I'm like thrift store shopping, is like an old Movie Mart shirt somewhere locally in
Oh
Cleveland. But I,
man,
I still haven't come across one yet. But I feel like the universe will put one in my path at some point.
that is so sick. I mean, were there certain posters that you had to keep? I mean, you mentioned like the Buffy one, but were there certain ones where it's like, you can give me $10 for this and I'm not selling it?
You know what the hot seller was that I had no interest in keeping was Free Willy. For some reason,
What?
for some reason, yeah, they had 10 copies of the Free Willy movie poster, and I remember that one sold like that, and that was the poster that made me up the price to $5. I think they just gave me like whatever had been like hanging around in the back room, but like kids
Oh my
love
God.
this movie, they love that poster, but
Oh man,
no,
that's funny.
trying to think of any of the other ones that I specifically like held on to, and it's escaping me at the moment. But when I moved out and went to college, my mom threw away all of my movie posters.
Oh
Yeah,
man,
I
what a
had
bummer.
I had a like a poster tube, full of them, and she just thought it was garbage I had left behind, so she chucked them. So that's a
Oh.
void I'm still trying to refill.
Yeah. Oh my God, that
Well,
is
when I went
ridiculous.
to I went to Spin City, which I know you've interviewed Harrison, and
So awesome.
he is such a delight. What a sweetheart! But he had the Buffy the Vampire Slayer poster, the movie poster.
Yeah.
So I bought it. So I felt like that was
Oh,
the universe
you
putting it back
did?
in me. Oh yeah. I
So,
bought it.
dude, I wanted to wait. I wasn't going to interrupt, but I was going to say I know that you had visited there, and that Buffy poster was there. I don't know if it was something, but come to find out, it's not there anymore. So sick.
It's mine, thanks to
That is,
Harrison, who I see is in the chat. Hi,
yeah,
Harrison.
yeah. And obviously like crediting himself, and there's a couple other spots, like as far as even maybe along like the east side of the state in Detroit. But on the west side of the state, there's nothing really. And like Harrison coming around, like his self, your show, there's so many things where I'm like, man, there's some cool stuff happening, and like thank God that it exists, because it's been far too long without. Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks to people like yourself for, keeping the wheels spinning and putting people in front of other people's lenses, so,
Sure.
it can just grow from there. It's like the spider web effect.
Yeah. Well, so as far as your interests, and maybe even earlier on when you go to your friend's house and you start watching some of these scary movies, maybe even up until recently, three scenes. What comes to mind as far as scenes that are forever ingrained in your brain? Maybe it's something so scary, or maybe it was something very sad, or violent, where you could just never forget it.
I think honestly, so I know that I said that Psycho and Cat's Eye, I saw those on the same night when I was young, but it was a couple weeks later that I saw Halloween for the first time,
Oh man.
and there was something about when Jamie Lee Curtis's character Laurie Strode is running to the house across the street, not like screaming and banging on the door for help, and they turn the porch light on and then they turn it off.
Yeah.
Like they're
Oh
like, "Yeah, I don't
man.
even want to get involved." I don't know why that always like bothered me, because as a kid, what are you taught? You're taught like, oh, you go to adults for help and blah blah blah, and it's like, oh my God,
It's not
she
even
tried
there.
to get help and she can't. Like they were just like, no, we're not dealing with that problem.
I
That
love
that
that.
always freaks me out.
Yeah.
As a youth and even as an adult. But even Friday the 13th Part 3, I don't know why. I hope I'm not spoiling this for anyone who hasn't seen it, but at the end when Dana Kimmel's character Chris wakes up in the canoe and then she looks up into the is it the barn or the house? I think it's the house that Jason is in, and he has his mask off, and you just see his face in the window. Like, there's something so unsettling about that. Like
Yeah.
it's goofy, but it's like still like, ugh. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's so abrupt too. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and we'll dig into this more. But your most recent episode for Midnight Rental digs into the Friday the 13th, and you mentioned that scene, and I was just like hands in the air praising, because that moment in that whole franchise, and I don't know if it was just maybe so much that part with him like clawing at the window, but then when he turns and goes to run downstairs, just like the abrupt, like weird pacing of it and everything. I don't know. And
It's
but you mentioning that, it is unsettling for sure. It's scary.
it makes you realize, like in that moment, you're like, oh my gosh, he's running downstairs, she's exposed. You know, it's like
Hmm.
the safety gone.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I love that. That's awesome. As far as, does anything come to mind, within the last like 2000s and whatnot? I guess it's always been something, but horror remakes oftentimes are, such a dud or such a bummer. But has anything come, to light to you that was something that you absolutely either adored or, something that you really appreciated, possibly liking even more than the original?
Um, I know everyone has opinions about reboots. They're not my first choice of films to see, but when they're done right, I think they're absolutely effective. I still haven't seen the Nightmare on Elm Street remake all the way through. But the Candyman, I don't know if you want to call it a remake. It just feels like an extension, I
Mm.
guess, or like a reimagining of. I thought that what they did with making what to me felt like a unique film that stands on its own, I thought that that was very beautifully shot. It was lovingly done. Like it was just a gorgeous film. I really enjoyed. I saw that in the theater, and I really enjoyed the theater experience with Candyman. But as far as, well, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 2003 remake, when I saw that with Jessica Biel, I remember that was just so brutal. And, the original one, it's, very minimal gore, but your mind fills in the blanks, so it feels gory. But the 2003 one was very gory, and I felt like unsettled. I remember walking out of the theater, but it was definitely an effective movie because it achieved its goal of making someone feel completely unsettled.
Yeah. For sure. Okay. Yeah, I like that too. And there's often times, where it kind of bums you out where they bring up something like an Evil Dead or, movies that we've, had
Yes.
very near and dear, but they've pulled off a couple. So it's fun sometimes, but then the Candyman where it's almost something that's a little bit of a standalone in itself, I kind of appreciate that they go with that route.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think I appreciate it more when it's being its own canon, its own vessel, and it's not. I don't think that I personally don't think we necessarily need, a reboot of Halloween. Like I
Mhm.
don't think we need to have like a remake of Halloween because how can you improve upon that movie, or what are you really going to say that's
Yeah, true.
necessarily more or better? I don't know. Yeah, so to see something reimagined in its own, like the way Candyman was,
Mhm.
that's more my preference.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I love it. With you mentioned the posters earlier on, but did you have did you collect VHS? Did you collect DVD as you were coming up as well, or were there other things, as far as a movie collection that you had?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had hundreds of VHS tapes growing up. Well, not when I was young, but once I got to high school and then I started working at Hollywood Video, and I had everything. I had everything at my disposal that I had previously never had access to. And when you grow up in the 90s without cable, you're really just in this like pop cultural vacuum. Like I never had any idea what anyone was talking about. So I loved that working at Hollywood Video, I could buy the used tapes for so cheap with my employee discount. So
Hmm.
I racked up all kinds of tapes, and then, DVDs came out, and when I was in college, I held on to my VHS tapes, except for the horror ones. I sold those on eBay. I sold my
Oh
horror
no.
VHS tapes, yes, because I was a broke college student, and I remember so clearly listing the Friday the 13th ones like in a perfect stack because I always kept my tapes like as nice as possible, and they still, like, I remember at the time DVDs being so hot, but being surprised at how horror movie VHSs still held their
Mhm.
value. I sold that stack of Friday the 13th on VHS in the prime of like new DVD explosion, still for like $120. Like that's,
Whoa.
yeah.
Jeez.
And that was, my aging myself here, that was like 2003, maybe 2002. So
Okay. Okay.
they
Yeah, it's
still have their value.
and even even today, you know how like things go through their phases and they have Blu-rays and different things. But even bringing up Spin City once again, going into their shop, you look around, you're just like, oh my God, there's maybe more VHS than DVD or Blu-ray than what I want right now. And not a slam on the, on what's available, but I'm like, golly, like look at this cover, or I've never even heard of this. It's kind of funny how that works for sure.
Well, and to put the question back to you, so what's something that you have found yourself buying like 2, 3, 4 times over, like through its format? Because we were just talking about this, that I have the Twilight Zone on VHS, and then I have the Twilight Zone, all of the series on DVD, and then also Blu-ray. Okay. So I'd be interested to hear what you have committed to buying on every format.
I want to say it would have to be Evil Dead.
Really?
And through and through. I think initially having probably the DVDs and then going back and having a couple of VHSs, which now I don't have. Once again, a little bit of a regret is not having those VHSs. But I remember like our local Blockbuster had. Do you remember like the cases where it was a DVD case and it was completely clear in the front and it would just show the disc and there was like art behind it?
Yes.
So those are initially like that was my introduction as far as like those DVDs, was checking out those and trying to get my hands on those, and then Blu-rays come out, and then they did the Book of the Dead editions.
Yes, the squishy front.
Yes. Yeah, so having those cool. And 4K and Army of Darkness, I probably have more editions of than anything else.
I feel like that's such like a that's like the, what do I want to say? Not the hat trick, but like that's like such a personality teller of like what I always love learning, like what is that one movie that someone has the most of in all of its formats. So that's really cool.
I think honestly it was always like the slapsticky, even in the original first movie with Sam Raimi's work, was just how funny everything was, along with it being scary, or even unpurposely funny. There's just so many silly things. I have the deer head from part 2. I have that tattooed, just with it being like such a stupid part, but like hilarious. It's just ridiculous. So yeah,
that's you will appreciate this. When I went to college, I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and my initial major was originally animation. I ended up changing that. But one of my professors was Rick Catazone, and he did the opening 2D animation for Creepshow, the skeleton and the window and everything. But he also helped develop the hand in Evil Dead 2, the armature. The hand armature.
Oh my God, no way.
Yeah. Yeah, he would carry it around the school with him, and just like he'd have the hand, and you could like give him a high five, and it was really cool. And I saw him not too long ago, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. He was at a convention, and I was like, Rick Catazone, you probably don't remember me, but I still owe the Art Institute of Pittsburgh like $20,000, but here I am paying you to sign
Oh my God.
He loved it. He thought it was hilarious. But yeah, God, just one of those.
That's so cool. Man. And as far as, with that being something, even touching on that, something that I've appreciated just out of being able to do these interviews is things with, the design work, looking into, what it takes, to set up a scene. Somebody, coming in to do the practical effects for something. There's just so many cool things about film that I still am learning and still growing to understand, and just to be able to see somebody like that and have somebody who's like, yeah, I designed this and now I'm doing this and having those stories. That's so awesome. I love that. It's so sick. So as far as your first work being involved in film, how does that come about?
Well, the Cleveland Film Commission was really lobbying for Cleveland to be a filming location for movies. So I have no idea how any of this stuff works with like where they give tax credits to, production companies that come and film. So that started being offered in Cleveland, I think, with the, oh my God, what was it? The Avengers movie. The Russo brothers put Cleveland on the map as like a, like, hey, here's a, place that you can now film even a big scale production.
Mhm.
So ever since the Avengers filmed here, there's been a lot more productions coming into town, and so I was just doing like extra work on the side. So that was, I guess, how I was never like aiming to do acting or anything. Primarily, I always liked it as a kid. I took theater classes when I was like 5 at Baldwin Wallace Children's Theater, but it was never something I had my sights on of like, I'm going to be an actor. It
Oh,
wasn't.
right, sure. With,
So.
with that earlier work though, how does that transition into initially the Big Bad B movie show, which if people haven't seen it is just as fun, absolutely ridiculous, over the top, awesome.
I'm glad from what you've seen, I'm glad you've enjoyed it. Yeah, that came about very, very sporadically, really out of nowhere. Like, I know you'll hear people say like, oh, it just fell into my lap, but like that really just fell into my lap. It was something that happened during I call it like the first wave of the pandemic, when we were still kind of in like the golden years of the pandemic. That was like August of 2020, and a friend who was working at Channel 19, he got a hold of me and said, oh, there's an open time slot on Channel 43, which is the sister station to Channel 19, and it's Saturday at 8 p.m., and the general manager wants to develop a horror hosted style show to bring that kind of late night television back, because Cleveland has a pretty rich history with horror hosts like Ghoulardi, Superhost, Big Chuck and Little John. So there hadn't been any original content programming like that in Cleveland, I think in like something over like 20 years. So they said to the person who had gotten in contact with me, because he's a producer there, do you want to produce this late night horror show? And he said, yeah, I would love to host it. And then he asked me if I would like to co-host, because he knew that I had a deep fondness and appreciation for horror movies. So that was how I got involved. It was not something that we developed and pitched to a network, anything like that. It was the station manager's idea, and then we threw together a pilot, and quite seriously, less than 3 weeks after I got that initial phone call, I think episode 1 was hitting the air. So it just like happened. When it happened really quick, and then we were doing an episode every week for the next 2 years.
Oh my God, that is so insane. So
Yeah.
this was actually like, I mean, my imagining of kind of seeing and going back and looking, from the first thing posted online to, I think it was 6 months ago was the most recent episode that was posted, was
Yeah.
just something of kind of a callback and having fun and doing it. But this was actually like a local TV show
Oh
or
yeah,
station.
yeah.
Oh my
Yeah, it was
God, that is
it was
so sick.
it was a local 2-hour television show. We would host a B movie from the 40s, 50s, or 60s. And we would do an intro to the movie. The movie would start, and then depending on how much content time we had to fill, sometimes it might be 5 minutes due to the length of the movie. Sometimes it could be 15 to 18 minutes that we would have to fill. So what, if you have looked for it or watched it on YouTube, what you see on YouTube are some of the skits that's me uploading them. Like the station, I mean, they never really cared about the show, so I always felt like I was like trying to be this little cheerleader for it, like, oh my God, we're doing this like cool show. I don't know why the station has no interest in putting any advertising money or anything into it. So I've just been I probably illegally uploading them to YouTube, because I was proud of what we did, and it was I think it's it's worth a look. But so they'll be on YouTube for as long as it hopefully goes until they tell me to take them down, which I hope they're not listening.
Well, I mean, and the thing is too, is not to say in the term of schlocky, as a bad term, but
Oh,
there's
yeah,
just
it's wonderful.
like
Yeah.
you can have that, and you can see, I mean, as far as the movies or TV shows or different things that you've seen over the years, where it can be done well, like
Mhm.
these shows that you've been involved with, and which is so exciting. And then there's plenty of things out there where it's like, oh my God, I see what they're doing, and I appreciate the energy, but this is not working. And you guys kill it. Like, it's just absolutely awesome. So from that initial series, how did that turn into Midnight Rental?
Well, my co-host on Big Bad B Movie Show, I think it was in late June of last year, when we were filming an episode, he let me know that the station didn't pick up the show for a third season, which I kind of knew was going to happen because the station manager who initially had developed the show earlier that year, he left and moved and went to a different market out of state. So when I heard that he had left, I was like, whoever they bring in that's new is not going to find the show probably charming or worth whatever little budget that it costs to put together, because like TV people, it all comes down to dollars and cents. So I had started thinking like, man, I wonder if it would be worth trying to continue going on my own in a different vein that's maybe a little more in my wheelhouse of interest in terms of talking about movies from the 80s and 90s. And then when he told me that the show officially wasn't picked up for a third season, I was not sad at all. I was not, I wasn't upset. My brain was like, okay, it's go time. Like, if I'm going to try it, it's got to be now. And I just had this feeling like, I feel like I have a good idea, or I at least have an idea that I want to see through to see if it has legs, and if it works, awesome. If it doesn't, that's fine too. I'll do something else. But so I started building the set, and how I got linked with the found footage guys. The one guy, Nick, he had a show on Night Flight, if you're familiar with that streaming network. Night Flight was this would be right up your alley, and anyone who's watching, Allie, they had a USA Network in the 80s had a late night block of programming called Night Flight, where they would show cult movies, crazy music videos, just all kinds of stuff, and it was on late at night. And someone in the last few years bought a warehouse, and all of the master tapes for Night Flight were in that warehouse. So they have all of the master tapes from like 1980 through like 1991. So for $5 a month, best $5 you will ever spend, you can join the streaming service Night Flight, and you have all of it at your disposal, and it's the perfect thing to put on in the background. Or like Vinegar Syndrome has movies on there. Like, they have a whole Vinegar Syndrome section. They have all of these cult classics. It's so freaking good. But Nick from Found Footage Fest had a little show on there that was a pandemic pickup show as well. And so when the show ended, I asked him, oh, how was it having your show on Night Flight? And he said, well, why are you asking? And I told him how the show wasn't picked up for a third season. And he said, well, you could use this as an extreme fallback option, but we're looking to expand our content on Found Footage Fest. Would you want to give your new show idea like a trial run of 6 episodes to see how it does on our channel? And I was like, hell yes, because I was gonna like shop it around to other TV networks in town. But if I learned anything from working on the first show, is there are so many things you can't do on TV, and I got really tired of hearing no all the time. So if I could do it under the umbrella of not only those guys, but on YouTube, where you can get away with a lot more, that was more appealing to me than trying to hustle it through TV channels. So
okay. I'm gonna have to check out this app and see. I mean, because that definitely sounds like everything that I want to be part of. For sure.
Yeah, look up their Instagram. They're on Instagram, and even their Instagram alone would be worth $5 a month. Like, there's so much fun stuff on there.
Sick. That's awesome. Well, so as far as like the episodes, then, so you transition. You have this character who is just over the top at times, very fun, bubbly, but energetic and also wholesome. I think that's the thing I appreciate too, is that it's not just over like just kind of silly listening in, and there were certain things with the Friday the 13th franchise where I'm listening and I'm like, I don't think I ever knew that, so I always appreciate things like that. The commercials, the things that are spliced in, are these things from personal collections, just a collective of everybody involved? How do you guys come upon some of these? Like there was a commercial for all of the Friday the 13th up to like part 7 or part 8 that you guys had involved in the episode that was like, I don't remember ever seeing, but looked awesome. I wish I would have been a part of.
Well, growing up, my VCR was definitely like a best friend because again, since we didn't have cable, I relied on that to record things that if I wasn't home, I did not want to miss a movie event. If something was airing on the weekend, Channel 43 might have, that was how I got introduced to Friday the 13th, because Channel 43, they would show a lot of edited for TV horror movies. So I had a lot of tapes left over of things that I recorded off of TV. So I had a lot of commercials as well. The Friday the 13th, like the movie advertising commercial that you're talking about, that one I ganked off of YouTube. I had found that maybe like 2 years ago and just saved it. And whenever I would have parties at my house, one of the things I loved doing was putting together commercial compilation playlists. Like one time I had an Italian night at my house where we were all like drinking wine and cooking pizza and pasta. And so I spent hours searching for all of these old vintage like Stouffer's commercials and Ragu commercials. And I just, like when I have parties, I go like way all out, and it's probably way too much, but like I would set all of my smart TVs to different YouTube commercial playlists that I put together. I do that during Christmas, I do that during Halloween. So when I developed Midnight Rental, even though it wasn't going to be on a TV network, I still wanted to carry over the feeling of it being a late night TV show. I wanted it to have commercial breaks. I wanted it to feel like you were watching something with that. So I would say 90% of the commercials that I've included are from tapes of mine or tapes that like for years I've thought, this is so lame. And it's not lame because I know a lot of people do it. I'm certainly not unique in this, but like I will buy tapes on eBay that other people have, that are other people's like, these are old, tapes we found in the garage from things we used to record off of TV. And I'm like, oh my God, give them to me, because you don't know what might be on there. There might be some really gold commercials on there.
Dang, that is insane. I've never, look, I have VHS, I have figures, all sorts of, absolutely goofy stuff that I've been collecting. I've never heard of picking up like other people's tapes or anything like that. And you mentioning this and seeing, the show that you have, it's an absolutely awesome opportunity. Like when I first watched, I guess the first episode, I think maybe it was the second episode actually that I initially had dawned on the show, and I was almost late for work because I'm like, I don't want to stop watching this. This is so sick. And it was like one of those things where you can kind of come across it. You can be like, oh, this was, I saw this was rehashed from last Christmas or something, but it was genuinely stuff that I remember being a little kid, in the early 90s. I'm like, why is this here? Like, who got this? That's so sick. That's awesome.
That's a great compliment. Nothing warms my heart more than potentially making someone late for their job. Like that's what I was on this earth to do.
It's drawing for sure. So if anybody's going to check it out, give yourself some time because you're gonna get lost in it for sure. I love it. So all of the great practicals, all the great pieces that are on these sets, which I'll say either for Big Bad or for Midnight Rental, what have been some of your favorites? You have Dubby, just an absolutely silly throwback to maybe a Pee-wee's Playhouse. What have been some of your favorite, and how did they come about?
I love Dubby. Dubby is the channel that Big Bad B Movie Show was on, was Channel 43, which for those of you who aren't in Cleveland, Channel 43's call letters were WUAB. It's a historic channel in Cleveland. They were the same channel I just mentioned that would air edited for TV horror movies. That was where I first saw Friday the 13th Part 6. That's why I love that one so much, because it's genuinely funny and you could still air it edited for TV, and it plays great. So when Big Bad B Movie Show came on Channel 43, I wrote an episode where a mascot that had been developed in the 80s that the station tried to develop. They thought that they would get on the mascot train and develop a character logo mascot from the W in WUAB, and he would just be like a crass drinking and smoking puppet who, you know, let fame get to his head, and he was very annoying about it. And like it would be that he had tried to have his own show at WUAB, but he got kicked off because on air he was canoodling with the station manager's wife. So that was the episode that I wrote. I thought it was really funny. And so when Midnight Rental started, I was like, oh, I should bring, because the Dubby puppet, it's huge. It's got to be probably 2 feet across.
Oh my
I thought, oh,
God, really?
yeah, it's a very big puppet. And when I developed Midnight Rental, I thought it would be funny to have a little M be in the same vein, like the M in Midnight Rental is Emmy, the puppet that we have, and that would be Dubby's cousin. Because at the end of the episode, I initially wrote for Dubby, he tries to sneak back up on the set by flipping himself upside down into an M. Yeah. And so that's where Emmy in Midnight Rental came from.
Oh my God, that's awesome. I mean, as far as like the VHS that's in the shop, you have, you know, the actual store, you have the curtains, televisions, as a lot of this stuff from from your personal collection as well, or is that a collective?
Yeah, those are all of my, everything on the set are things that I've sourced or were my own personal belongings. A lot of the stuff came from, like, the Big Bad B-Movie show set. That was my co-host. He put like some tapes that were that was the station vault that we filmed in. He put some equipment that was down there, arranged it, but the rest of like the accoutrements that were on the set, that was all my stuff that I brought in. I had like crazy mannequins and everything, so I moved all of that onto set at the new spot. And the TVs are, I know people are selling CRT TVs for astronomical prices, but don't pay those prices, guys. I got all of those TVs from Salvation Army. Just be patient. Go to Salvation Army, at least in Cleveland. That's where I've had the best luck getting CRT TVs. I never paid more than $15 for one, and I have 14 on set. So just over the period over the period of like 2 months, I'm giving away my secrets of where to find the CRT TVs. But I feel like everyone should have a CRT TV if they want one without having to resort to paying like $250. But look on Marketplace. Look at Salvation Army. I don't know what Goodwill does with their CRTs because they never have any on the floor. I think that Goodwill's better about knowing what things are value-wise, and I think they put those online. But yeah, you can. The most expensive thing to build on the set were the video shelves, actually, because the price of lumber had gone up so much during the pandemic. Yeah, I think to build the shelves, it was over, because we have a fake wall too. That was almost like, I think $1,000 for after all was said and done. Because I was kind of annoying. I was like, they have to look a certain way. I wanted them to look just like they did when I worked at Hollywood Video, but I could not. That was the one thing I could not find in time on Marketplace or anywhere that I searched. So I had to build them.
Man. That's so awesome and so cool, you know, just hearing all of these things and overall appreciation for everything, for found footage. I was really mad because I ended up having to work when you guys were in town as well as found footage. So cool stuff, man. You know, like really, I have to say I appreciate everything you guys are putting into it. How can, if somebody wants to support, you know, there's different ways, you know, as far as something like that, you know, having to fund these things and putting these things together. How can somebody support these things?
One way that won't cost you a dime if you want to support the show is just sharing it with a friend that you think is like-minded and might enjoy horror movies. Just telling them about the show, like that costs nothing, but it does so much. It reaches more people that way. We did set up a Patreon not too long ago. Like I feel it's one of those things where it's like you feel guilty being like, oh, join the Patreon, but like we have everyone who works on the show is absolutely like on a volunteer basis. We've had some really talented people involved. My camera crew, I always want to pay them when they're there because they're taking time out of their day, but I'm like scraping the bottom of the barrel. So we have a Patreon. And I do all of the editing and the writing myself. I've had some people come in and write segments like George from Found Footage. If you watch
Okay.
Saturday morning cartoons, he wrote the body bag segment that was in episode 3. But it's hard because everyone's so busy, and then when I'm doing all of the different components, if there's a stopgap with me, then everything on the show stops. So what I would love to do is hire an editor who can take over the editing duties because truthfully, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I only just learned to edit in Premiere as I've been doing the show. And it's purely out of desperation and necessity because I don't have anyone who can like full-time edit. So I'm learning as I go. I'm usually up at 4 a.m., half crying and searching Premiere tutorials on YouTube. Javier Mendez, he has a Premiere tutorial channel. I've utilized him many times when I'm trying to figure out a problem. So that's one way to support the show is joining Patreon. As guilty as it makes me feel having to ask, that is that if you have a trust fund that you're just sitting on and you're like, what should I do with this? If you find late night horror shows charming, then we could always use the support. But yeah, the free support is following us on Instagram and Facebook and all those other fun social media sites that I don't give nearly enough attention to.
No, it's absolutely awesome. I from my viewing, I have to say I had reached out to, and maybe even a buddy, I'm not sure, but Nukem Dave, he has a page
Yes,
on here.
Dave's a good friend of mine, Dave and Amy.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So both of them, I had to reach out to him because I was like, man, can I email her? Do you know is she a local friend? Because uh, just seeing the show, I was figuring that this has been a thing for 10 years and you guys have been tossing. Honestly, I really appreciate. He's like, I don't know, maybe just message her, man. You could probably just try and get a hold of her. So this has been awesome, though. Thank you so much, Laura. This has
Oh
absolutely been
my
great.
gosh,
Um,
I was honored that you asked me because I'd followed you on my personal account like way before the show ever started, and it was funny. I was with Dave and Amy not too long ago, and I told him that I was gonna be doing an interview with you, and he's like, I did an interview with him too, and I thought that was so cool because I mean I'm sure you've seen his house before. Their house is
awesome.
oh my god!
So sick.
The first time I went over there, I couldn't. I was speechless. Like
Yeah.
their collectibles are insane.
Posters. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so cool. So yeah, I had to appreciate, just the fact of friends through here. That was how this whole thing started, was wanting to interview just friends, honestly, and hearing different people. So it's so cool to hear your story and to hear how it has developed into this awesome midnight rental that you have going on right now. Brand new Friday the 13th episode just went up. So sick. Thank you very much.
No,
This has been great, Laura.
I could talk to you all day. No, this was
Yeah.
so nice of you. I really appreciate it. And again, I was truly honored to come on and get to speak with you and
Totally.
everything. I know our
Totally.
paths will cross one day in person. So
Yeah. All right. You take care, and we'll stay in touch. And for anybody who came in late, this will be within the next month or so. I'll have it up on YouTube. And yeah, you take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
awesome. You as well. Thank you so much.
Yep. See you later.
He's a lo-fi horror guy. Yeah, he's kind of a guy, but he is so lo-fi a horror guy. Yeah. Lo-fi horror guy has been recorded in front of a live studio audience.